Atheism as a positive doctrine has done precious little for science. I want to introduce you, if you don't know him already, to Professor Steve Fuller, Professor of Sociology at Warwick University. I'm actually a research student at Warwick University, but I've never met Steve Fuller. I wish I had. He is not a Christian. He calls himself a secular humanist. He has written extensively on the history of evolution and the whole history of the development of science. I'm going to be quoting from him extensively because you might be quite surprised at what he comes up with. Now remember, he is not a Christian, he is not a creationist. He has arrived at this from his study of the history of science. And he says the track record of neo-Darwinism is parasitic on prior creationist breakthroughs over which neo-Darwinists now claim sole ownership, and which creationists have yet to claim back as their own. So what he is saying is there have been creationist breakthroughs in the history of science, and neo-Darwinism is parasitic on those, and it's not acknowledging the history that led up to it, and creationists have got to claim this history back as theirs. The history of much of science, and particularly this area of biology, belongs to creationists. Well, to biology in general, belongs to creationists. That's what Steve Fuller is saying. And he's urging people who believe this to properly claim it back. So actually, that's what I'm going to try and do tonight. I'm going to try and claim back genetics because I'm going to now try and show that modern genetics owes everything to creationism and virtually nothing to Darwinism. In fact, it may actually be nothing. That's maybe something we can debate at the end. I'm not sure that genetics owes anything at all to Darwinism. Certainly doesn't owe much. And on the contrary, Darwinism hindered, I believe, the development of modern genetics. And where might we be if that had not happened? This is what I believe, that Ray, Linnaeus and Mendel were pursuing a very fruitful path, and Darwinism brought it to a halt. What is needed now is for it to be resumed. That was the fruitful path, when they based their view of biology on a creationist, a biblical framework. And so much time has been wasted trying to squeeze the amazing findings of modern cell biology and genetics into a Darwinian mold. For Darwinism to be true, it needs to be able to explain everything to do with life without reference to a designer and in terms of random inheritable changes. So let's just finish by going to what will probably be the final hurdle for evolution, to account for consciousness. I'm not departing from the theme because genes have got to be able to explain consciousness. A final word, if genes are all we are, which is what Dawkins basically believes, isn't it? Selfish genes are what it's all about. A final word from John Maynard Smith, spoken in 2001. See, his honesty again. I have no way of explaining consciousness. It is entirely inexplicable and mysterious. He died in 2004. Some final words from Steve Fuller. Who's afraid of biblical literalism? This is what he says. A literal reading of the Bible has done more to help than hurt science over the centuries. That's the opinion of a secular humanist writer. Neo-Darwinism needs to justify the continued pursuit of science given the diminished cosmic status that the theory accords our species. That's his way of expressing what I was saying earlier, and he does elaborate more in his writings, that this view of us as just an evolved animal would not lead you to do science. It was only because people who had a different view of the world and of people had got science going that people are able to carry it on. And very brilliantly, nobody's denying that. But the impetus came from a completely different worldview. And Steve Fuller says, while I cannot honestly say that I believe in a divine personal creator, no plausible alternative has yet been offered to justify the pursuit of science. And these are his words. I would be more polite. Even if most scientists nowadays call themselves atheists, atheism as a positive doctrine has done precious little for science. Atheism as a positive doctrine has done precious little for science. Atheism as a positive doctrine has done precious little for science.